Hi, this is Jen Chopsy Baby. Today I am taking a look at things you can use at home to help support your child with dyslexia. Now, if like me, you're right at the start of your dyslexia journey with your child, it's overwhelming actually. I think overwhelming is the word, and it's very difficult to support your child who is also stuck within the very rigid framework of the education system. Everything with dyslexia, you just have to reassess the way everything is presented to them, and it's just hard to know where to start sometimes. So I thought I would just show some of the things that we've started putting in place at home. So to begin with, over here we've got some coloured pens and pencils. So these pencils are quite useful if they're doing spelling, because every primary school child tends to come home with spelling to learn, which a lot of the time is completely pointless if your child is dyslexic. It's never going to work, but if we're going to go along with it, then it's quite useful. Maybe if teachers like to put these things in grids, which isn't helpful if your child's dysgraphic anyway, but if they have to write out the spelling so many times, it can be useful. Let's take the word, I don't know, let's just take the word dog, for example. Suppose they have to write the word dog out 4 times in a grid. Dog with the orange, and you put the orange down. Dog with the pink, you put the pink down. Dog with the green, put the green down. Dog with the black, and you put the black down. So they can be quite useful when you have to do those repetitive things, but also make them stop and focus on what they're doing. And also, these are essential. Highlighters are essential. So if you've got worksheets, like maths problems, for example, and you've got this long word problem, and you have to pull out the key information. So, so if you take away the focus on the words and you just take a highlighter and you highlight the really important information, it can be really helpful for the child who's really struggling to process it. So it's like they could probably do the maths problem, but because it's a word problem, it just makes it so much harder. These highlighters are also really useful for children who are dysgraphic as well as dyslexic. So what you could do is, if in their homework book or maths book, always the maths book. Maths books are awful for children with dyslexia and dysgraphia. They've got this big piece of graph paper and they don't know where their hand's going. Where do you put your hand? Where shall I start? Where shall I finish? How shall I lay out this calculation? So just highlighting under the lines where they need to write will help draw their attention, their eye, straight to where they need to write. So if my child has homework, what I would do in the homework book is I always double line everything. It's so much easier, and I will underline the line she needs to write with a highlighter. And it's easy to do at home, it's easy to do at school, but they just don't have the extra staff to do it usually. But this is just so helpful in things like maths homework. It really, really works. So children who cannot lay out calculations, if you just do little lines, like for column addition, for example, where they need to write in their answer, it just tidies their work up straight away. Okay, so moving on, what we have here is an ancient piece of tech called an Alpha Smart 3000. They used to be quite commonly found in schools about 10, 15 years ago, but it's brilliant, it's indestructible. You could smash this at walls for hours and it will probably just bounce back at you. It's powered by a couple of AAA batteries, I think, that would last an entire lifetime. And you just type your work in here, it shows it on the typeface like that, and then over here you have a cable to plug it into the computer. I'm holding the owner's manual at a funny angle because I've got my son's name written on the front, and just keeping that away from the eyes of the world. But no, this is brilliant. This is really, really great. I wish I had one of these at school. It would have been so much easier. And it's really good for children with dyslexia as well, and dysgraphia. Dysgraphia, this one is brilliant for dysgraphia. Right, what we've got here is something called coloured overlays. And this is for children who suffer with things like visual stress. Now, if visual stress is also, I apologise, Bristolian accent, I can never say, Irlen syndrome. If you look up Irlen syndrome, yeah, very piratey, I know, or visual stress, that is when children complain that the words are moving on the paper, they're shimmering, or they move around, and my daughter tried one of these coloured overlays out, and she said, I didn't tell her what they were for when I did it, I just popped it over her reading book, and she said, oh wow, that's amazing, it glues the words to the page. So if your child says something like that, it's a cheap way before you pay out for an assessment with a behavioural optometrist. I think that's the word, it's quite a tricky one, a behavioural optometrist. Those are the people who can diagnose Irlen syndrome. And what you've got here You've got lots of different ones, different colours work on different pages and different fonts. So you can just try out your child's reading book or their homework with one of these just to see if it takes that glare off. Not only the glare, but it keeps the words still. And these, they're about £15, which is, I think, a really cheap way of helping without having to pay for an assessment. I think I was quoted about £150 for an assessment, a colour overlay assessment from a standard high street optician, but I think a behavioural optometrist, I hope I've got that word right, it's a funny one, I was quoted getting on for £500, and that's a lot of money. That is a lot of money, especially when you've already pulled out £500 for an ed psych assessment. So some more tech that's useful. I don't tend to use tablets, I don't know, I just don't like them, but these can be really good. You can dictate stuff in, so software like drag and dictation. So I've also got an iPhone here. Drag and dictation on a tablet or an iPhone means that you can talk straight in to it and it will just, the words just appear on screen. It's good if you've got received pronunciation. You might have to adjust your accent somewhat if you have the pirate Bristol accent. And again, that brings me on to things like laptops, which for children with dyslexia and dysgraphia, they're just essential really. So these are just a few of the things that we've been trialling out in the early days of my daughter's dyslexia diagnosis. In Bristol we have something called the Bristol Dyslexic Centre, which is just amazing. That's where we went to get our diagnosis. An ed psych assessment's about £500. Hooray! You can also be diagnosed by specialist teachers as well, and you can also go up to the centre and they do lots of lessons and they help parents get to grips, not parents, children and adults with dyslexia. They just help you get to grips with learning and how to achieve when you have dyslexia. And also if you go to the Nessie, they're actually the people who developed Nessie, which is an amazing computer program which helps children with dyslexia really get to grips with learning how to read in a way that suits them.